Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Better Together podcast. I am your host for today, Shawn Sundsvold, and as always, I'm joined by my partner in life and in business, Kelly Sundsvold. Today's guest is Kiley Romero. She is the co-founder of Smooth Mortgage Company, a business and career coach, and entrepreneur who's committed to carving her own path. She's had the opportunity during her career to work closely with high-performing executives and decision makers at the top of their game, people leading at a level most of us probably aspire to. And today she's pulling back the curtain to share some of the mindset shifts and strategic moves that shaped success not only for her, but the leaders she coaches. This conversation is guaranteed to be filled with stories and insights that will help you think bigger, lead better, and build with long-term clarity, no matter where you are in your journey. So, Kiley, thanks so much for being here today. I am really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. So tell us catch us up on where you're at in your entrepreneurial journey and what led you to starting Smooth Mortgage Company.
Yeah, so about 10 years ago, I was working for a large corporation and had been in pharmaceuticals, tech. I'd been in sales for about 15 years, had been an award-winning sales rep, and had helped win against a big, large company, a multi-billion dollar organization that had been around for a long time, that were discriminated against people who worked for the organization when it came to mental illness, chronic illness, terminal illness, whether it was them or their kids. And so, I that really laid heavy on my heart, and I played a big pivotal role in winning that for some other parents, as well as myself, and also wrote policy for that company to change the trajectory of how employees were going to be treated when they dealt with those chronic illnesses, terminal illness, mental illness, or their family members. And so after that being something that I felt a lot of, it was difficult, but I thought, what am I going to do with this adversity? How can I use this as wind to my back to go help shape the lives of people, not only working within big corporations, but how do they navigate their own career? And so after that, I started consulting. I started consulting anybody from a college student. I've helped kids get into Brown, NYU. All the big programs. I've helped people get security clearances, employees that have worked for me that are in the military or are also ex-military. And then I started working with companies and building companies up from the ground up, everything from internship programs to time and tracking systems to payroll. I had some HR experience as well in selling big time, solutions, as well as part of my corporate career. And then about 2017, a childhood friend of mine who had moved out to Chicago had said, "What do you think about being a part of my mortgage company?" I said, "I don't come from that world, but I do come from sales and marketing." He said, "Well, that's why I'm reaching out to you." And so we started Smooth Mortgage in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. I don't know if that was the smartest thing to do, but it gave me a lot of insight on how to get really good on being on the phone with people. This is like straight lockdown. I also started a tax company at that time and started two companies that are now flourishing today. So it was just kind of like I was thrown into this very regulated world of mortgage and learning how important it was to be transparent to the consumer, and why Dodd-Frank was implemented in 2010 by then Barack Obama, what that meant, and the scrutiny that brokers like myself were under, as they should be, due to the housing crash. It led me into a whole other area of just an industry that's probably one of the hardest, because it is commission only, it is sales, it's activity every day. The loan officers and the brokerages that do well are people that have the activity and the attitude daily. So I've seen people 2 to 3 years in do better than people who are in for 20 years, because again, it just depends on what you're going to do every day. From there, I met Matt Ishbia, who is the owner of UWM, the CEO and president and founder of UWM, and he also happens to be the owner of the Phoenix Suns and the Phoenix Mercury basketball teams, which meant a lot to me because I'm from Arizona, born and raised in Arizona. So just looking at the way working with someone that close at that level of taking his company from, the company's been around for 40 years, but taking over his dad's really small loan shop after graduating from Michigan State and growing it into a multi-billion dollar company, bigger than Bank of America, Chase Bank, by billions, and just doing one part of lending really taught me about leadership and about really having that unreasonable hospitality, which is a book, by the way. Definitely read that book on how to put your feet in the shoes of your client And it's just
Mhm.
has to be all about the client and what does a broker. So what Matt did is, what does the day of a Kiley Romero look like on the broker owner side? And how do I delegate who? I mean, there's 80 lenders to use, and we give about 90% of our business to them for three reasons: speed, all of the tools and technology that they have around AI. They already have AI tool that has a back end of its chat UWM. It's pretty much like chat a GPT, and just throwing a loan in there, having to break down the scenario. The speed of what they're doing as far as not only the customer service, but also the technology is what we were clear to close in an hour and a half,
Mhm.
the other day. And just the fact of the matter is it's not so much, okay, we have the technology is what I've seen as far as entrepreneurs and these C-suite executives just far in advance beyond anybody else. It's the fact that they're listening to the client. So what I've learned, and I thought I had this down, pretty good by the time I started a mortgage company, was how do I put my entire being in what my client is thinking, feeling? Like, what are some of the things that I can take off their plate so that they could focus on their job instead of, wearing 10 different hats is what most entrepreneurs do when they're starting out in a lot of these startups that I see. What I'm always thinking is, how can I take off when someone's looking for a loan, or there's an athlete look to see what they want to do? How do I figure out what their needs are and build it around what they want? And so when you make it about the client, all the other accolades just follow, right? The sales numbers are there. People want to work with you because they know that you really care. Why? Because you're investing in them. So the top people that I've been able to work with, like the Matt Ishbias and Mary Beth Rampolas, the Dolores Hillenbrands, some of these people that are ultra successful, is because they really do have no, they do know their worth, but they have no ego in it. And they're really just driving toward what is best for the client. And that's where they start with, and that's where they end with.
Awesome. So thanks for sharing all that. Throughout your career, you've had an opportunity to work with some really amazing business leaders. People have led multi-million dollar and even a billion dollar company. So what have you learned from working with these individuals?
Well, first thing I've learned is they have a very strong response time. I mean, they respond within an hour. And that's something that I have implemented for people that work with me. I mean, we all have lives, we're in the shower, vacation, but so much about doing well in all industries is speed. To the speed which
Mhm.
you can do it in, right? It has to be strategic. It has to be well thought out. AI is not like, I'm going to touch back on that. So we still crave human interaction, and there's always going to be that piece. I mean, AI is a tool to delegate, or maybe not have 10 things you want to run email through it to make it sound better. But the number one thing that I see in this ultra high performers are response of time. Within an hour, even if they don't have the answer, they'll respond and say, I don't know the answer. And they're honest, and they'll say, I don't know the answer. I don't have that information right now, but I'll get it from you. So that's the number one thing. Also, their attitude. I mean, they really focus on what they can control. Right. I mean, there's so much going on right now that it's hard for people to think straight. Right. There's just a lot of chaos going on here in this country, I think, for the first time in a lot of our lives. You wake up to bad news all the time, and you're thinking, how do I get myself focused on the things that I gotta do, because I gotta feed my own family, and I'm, obligated to people. So they focus and they control what they can control, and they really take one day at a time. Like, what do I have to do today? And now they maybe have forecasted out for next quarter or what they want their next 5 years to look like, but they're always focused on the micro, because a micro affects the macro. Their attitude. They always, no matter what's going on in their personal life, and they do take that time off if there's something they need to take time off for, but their attitude is always there. In my career, I've seen some people graduate from some of the, NYU or some of these other schools that never end up on a big movie set or never follow through with their goals because, I mean, attitude and execution will outweigh talent and intelligence every day. And it was
Mhm.
something that I needed to get over myself, as someone that does mentor a lot of students and a lot of people coming into their career for the first time, that you've got to check your attitude. And again, you got to have self-worth, but a lot of entrepreneurship and highly successful people, they don't have the ego, right? I mean, maybe they have a persona that we see on TV or when they're in an interview, but they cannot possibly be where they're at if they didn't listen to other people. When you're an entrepreneur, you hire other people to tell you what to do. And you've
Yeah.
got to be comfortable with that. So they're great at delegating. I mean, Matt Ishbia, just using him as an example, right? Wasn't that great of a basketball player, and these are his words. Didn't get to the NBA. Well, guess what? He bought a team instead, right? So, I mean, if that's not one of the biggest flexes in the world, I don't know what is, right? But he's somebody that control what he can control, but he's also had the same 20, 25 people working with him for all these years. That says something in his leadership. He's always open to listen. He's listened to me. He listens to his clients. So those are the main things that I've seen highly successful people do. They understand speed to the market. They understand their attitude, execution. They understand having the right people around them to tell them what to do and not necessarily the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. And, one of the things you mentioned in there was controlling what you can, right?
Mhm.
One of the best managers I ever had, one of the things he taught me was, his phrase was always control the controllables,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times that means you,
Mhm.
yourself, your
Mhm.
reactions, and your behaviors, right?
Mhm.
Like those four things are the constant set of things that you can control. So let's take that a step further and looking at like, the decision making process for, some of the people that you've worked with, and how do these strong leaders make decisions under pressure, and how do you see that differ from other?
They're pretty quick to make decisions, but once they have all the information, right? So again, they make sure that they have the right team of people, a team of people that they can trust, almost like a team of advisors, right? I mean, these are typically the people that work with them. So they're pretty quick on making decisions. They do always go with their gut. So even if they're advised a certain way, right? Even if there's 100 people telling them to do something, they do typically go with what they know. But a lot of the information comes from how is the business doing? What does our client say? And what does the market say? So they make decisions based on the market, right? So a lot of these decisions aren't personal. They're not, what do I think? Like, what does the market think? And when I say market, I mean industry, because the market doesn't care what Kylie thinks, right? The market cares on what you're going to do. So a lot of the way they make decisions is it seems fast, but it's been well thought out. And they typically don't question themselves after that, right? But
Mhm.
these are people that they listen, they learn, and they watch. And they also have people, what I call as watchers. They have people that they will say, why don't you go out there and tell me what's going on. And these are typically people they've known for a long time. These people maybe they've known from their childhood, or people that they see, they pay a lot of attention to the way other people make decisions in their personal and professional life. And this is something that I've watched really closely on how has that person lived their life to where I want to have them close to me, right? What are
Yeah.
they like in their family? And then they take all that information and they make a rather quick decision, and it's based off of just having done it before, right? Because a CEO or someone at a very high level is paid to make decisions that will affect thousands, sometimes millions of people. So they don't regret their decisions often. They do their research and they have people around them that they trust to give them the best information to make that decision. But oftentimes they try not to make it where it's all about themselves or personal, and oftentimes they're making decisions maybe they don't want to make, but it's for the betterment of the organization. It's the betterment of where the industry is going.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, you're a mentor, you're a coach yourself. Who's influenced your leadership style? And in what way have they done that?
Yeah, I would say my family. I would say I come
Yeah.
from a very large military family, one of the largest in American history. I come from a big Latino family, so I have relatives that I have probably one of the longest living veterans living about 20 minutes away from me. He's 99. He'll be 100 on May 31st.
Wow.
He fought in
Wow.
World War II. So a lot of my relatives were in actual war. And I had one uncle that was lost at sea for 3 days back in the 30s, and they thought he was dead. And he survived. So when you come from that sort of survival backbone, it's kind of hard to feel sorry for yourself. Or like my parents who lost my youngest sister, and my dad, and just the way my parents behaved to each other with so much grace during, such a difficult time and one of the hardest times in their life. And so that to me is where leadership starts from. And so
Mhm.
I took that as a very young mom and thought, okay, well, what's my legacy going to be like? And what do
Mhm.
I want my relationships to look like? And what do I want to be for? So the way I thought is, well, I come from this family of this legacy of people who don't ever complain, who don't ever feel sorry for themselves, who don't play a victim, even though many of them really were. And so when you come from that foundation, it's easier to propel yourself forward regardless of what comes your way, because you have all these role models that turn their adversity and their darkest hour into diamonds. I mean, they spun that into diamonds literally, right? They went on and they mentored other people and they helped other people, and they weren't bitter for the ugliness maybe they saw in war. And now they're thinking, my uncle, great uncle, can't believe what's going on now because he's trying to fight this from happening, right? So when you have that foundation, it's hard not to want to lead. It's hard not want to help other people. And it's hard not to want to give back as much as you can. So what I do is I try to anything that I learn, I don't keep any secrets. Everybody, once you know me, you can call me up. There's no secret to the sauce, right? And just give as much information. Now, it doesn't mean everyone's going to do it, right? But at least you are going to say, this is what I've learned. I wish I would have known this 20 years ago, or this is what would have helped me go faster. So it's really my upbringing. I had a really good childhood. I know that's rare. And I had too many people that I couldn't let down. And so for me, I felt like if I'm going to go work, I'm going to be the best at what I'm doing. If I'm going to leave my daughter, yeah, because I had to, work as a young mom, then I want to be the best sales rep. I'm going to be the best at what I can be because that's all I saw. So it was a lot easier for me to feel like I could do that because that's what I was shown my entire life.
Mhm. So, kind of shifting this a little bit towards your experience as a founder, how has your own experience as a founder kind of shaped the way that you show up for your business support?
Well, being a founder is a whole other,
Yeah.
the difference between being a founder, someone who buys a business, and a CEO, and it is your real self comes out. Your real self comes out, and it's not for everybody because you have to hire people that you have to listen to, and you have to let your ego down, and you are the leader, and you lead by example in every way. So for me, it's really taught me to be a better person, even though I thought I was doing, pretty good. It's a different level of responsibility, and you are responsible for people. You are.
Hmm.
And it starts with you and the way you behave out in the world, they mimic. So if you come in with a bad attitude, don't be surprised that your team isn't performing. So it's taught me to just be very disciplined. I mean, like I said, I come from that background anyway, but it is, entrepreneurship, it's just not for everyone. And until you're profitable, it's a hobby, and you got it every day. It can be a lonely road. It can be depressing. I'm going to
Hmm.
just be honest because it is a roller coaster, and it is definitely not for everybody. And that's why most businesses fail, or most people fail, if you think about it, in the first 3 to 5 years. And so if you can get past that 5 year mark and you can be profitable, then you're doing something right. But you got to be open to change, and you got to be open to flexibility, and got to be open to people leaving if it's not the best thing for them. And when you
Hmm.
hire, what is the best thing for this employee, and how can I get them from point A to point B? And so it's a lot of flexibility, discipline, and so it's really taught me a lot about what people go through. And I have a lot of respect for people that like a Matt Ishby or some of these other people because they didn't come from anything. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
they it's not like they were given they were born wealthy, which I don't have anything against that. I'm just saying that there's something for somebody that came from nothing and built something. So mimicking and stealing is much of the attributes that they have as well. But it just gives you a lot of understanding and respect about how hard it is. And I wouldn't do it any differently than the way I've done it. I mean, I've learned a lot, but I took the entrepreneurship road, but it's definitely not for everybody. I mean, I've mentored people and they go back and they're like, this isn't for me because it, it,
Mhm.
it requires a different level of character. I mean, it just does, especially in the climate that we're in. There are no second lives. And so,
Hmm.
when you're walking outside, you got to assume you're being recorded, right? And so there's a different level of character. And I'm glad in transparency that I see that's going to trickle down from government to business to sports everywhere that is so needed to do right by individuals. So to me, if you're not going to do right by people, you probably shouldn't be in business at all. And I'm glad to see that shift slowly but surely.
Yeah, I think that transparency as a business owner is just so important, right? Because
Yeah.
people are trusting you, your product, your service, whatever it is.
Mhm.
They're definitely, working to trust you with that. And I know when we first talked, one of the things that we talked a lot about was not being afraid of failure or judgment, right? The idea
Yeah.
that, when you're talking to somebody, the worst thing that somebody can say to you is no,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
why is that so important for visionary leaders?
Yeah, you've gotta get over that, because you're gonna be told no a lot. You've gotta get over yourself. For me, I just got active on social media a few years ago, and it was through Mary Beth Rampola, who her brother started Zico, and he sold it to Coca-Cola, and then he bought it back. She played a pivotal role. She came with the name and the original packaging and all that. But she's like, why aren't you online talking about your career? And it was hard for me because the way I was raised, you just kind of put your head down and you do the work, but that's not today's
Hmm.
world. And so it
Mhm.
was really hard for me to even, like, my first podcast was a few years ago, and I was like, oh my God, now I got to talk about my work. I already work. Now I got to, so I had to get comfortable myself with just talking about
Yeah.
what I've done, but it doesn't need to be I. It needs, what is the value I brought other people? Or what have I
Hmm.
changed in people's lives? And that's something to talk about. What's the value I have to bring? So people have to get comfortable with that, and they have to get comfortable with being judged and rejected. Not everyone's going to believe. For me, it's like if somebody says no to me, at least they'll say no, but they can't say I didn't do my due diligence. They can't
Yeah.
say I didn't do my job. Right? We're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. That's fine. Nobody's everybody's cup of tea. And I think that has to do a lot with ego and fear. And you've just got to taken in stride. If you've done a good job and if you've done your due diligence, maybe they'll come back. And I've often had that happen, but you can work on a loan for 6 weeks and have it fall through because the underwriter finds something and there's no pay unless you get the loan, or you work with the client for a while and something, they get an injury and they no longer earn any of your services. So it's just par for the course. And you're not the only one who's been told no, right? But
Mhm.
I always try to, if I put everything out there, and I've really paid attention, and I've listened to what the client is asking of me, because I work behalf on the client, not the other way around. And a lot of people don't want to have that patience. They want the red carpet and the podcast and all that. No, you got to do the work. That's a byproduct of
Hmm.
the work that you've done. They can never say, she didn't do her job. And that's a very big thing for me. I'm never going to have anybody be able to say I didn't do my job. So I always have a lot of peace with if stuff doesn't work out. And to me, like, my faith is it just wasn't meant to be. I mean, maybe that's not what God wanted for me. And that you have, and to me, that's kind of the way that I humble myself. So, I mean, I've been in sales. I mean, that's where I started. Is I've been told all kinds of things throughout my career. It doesn't bother me, but to somebody coming in new, yeah, you just, it's par for the course. Don't feel bad.
Yeah.
Keep doing the work, keep learning, and you're going to have people say yes, but you've got to be consistent. That's the other thing. People, they're told no, and then they think, oh, I'm a failure or I'm not good at what I'm doing. Matt Ishbia walked into a broker 90 times before they said, okay, we'll throw a loan to you. 90 times.
Mm.
So there's
Mm.
a reason why he's a multi-billionaire and owns a team. It's not about the money. It's about the principle behind the money. How did they get there? That's what I want to know. Right. And we can be, there's lots of rich people, right? But doesn't mean that they actually took those steps to get to where they are. And that's what I think is so interesting about somebody like that. You're like, okay, if he was told 90 times no, he still kept going in there. And that's the difference between ultra successful people and people that are not. They don't give up. Right. So you got to kind of just let the no, go by the wayside and not worry about it.
Yeah, I love that so much, and just that commitment to their goal,
Yeah.
right? And
Hmm.
one of the things that you briefly mentioned it a little bit ago, and again on our intro call, this is not the first business you've started in the last 5 or 6 years, right? I think if I remember correctly, you're up to somewhere between 4 or 5 that you've started in the last few years, right? Tell us
Yeah.
more about, what led you to just kind of be like, all right, this is what I'm going to do, and decide this one, then this one, then this one. What led you to just kind of go, this is what I want to do is build these businesses.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had this agent that came to me who had been in the industry for like 20, 30 years. And again, there's a big difference between an agent and an entrepreneur. I mean, there's a big
Mhm.
difference between I'm a good salesperson, but do I know how to run a company? And the first thing that I see in people, and the first reason I want to work with people is because they know what they're good at and they know what they're not good at. Right. And so people are often scared because, like, this is not my lane. I don't even know how to build a business. There's policy, there's payroll, there's laws. And the law doesn't care if you have one employee or a million employees. You have to know what you're doing. So with this last, with the sports agency and how I got into sports, I never thought I'd be in sports, but I had a guy approach me and we talked, and he's like, how do I get you to work with me? I said, well, I can be a consultant. He said, no, I want you to be like my second in command. So I just ended up starting the internship program. I ended up everything, payroll, vision, branding, and rebranded his company and everything. And it's something that comes very easy to me. It might sound weird. If somebody tells me this is my business idea, I could probably tell you exactly what to do. I mean, it's just It's something that I love to, that I love to do, but I also understand the policy side of it, which a lot of people don't, right? A lot of people understand, okay, I have this idea, but there's also this whole legal side to it. And I'm not a lawyer, but I know what to do to minimize those costs and things like that. And, company policy, how important it is for people to understand what you stand for, what your vision is. I started that at the beginning of last year. I That company was basically in fruition in under 30 days, and we went from having 0
Wow.
people to about 25 people, and from there, I was able to do some really cool things. And then there was some stuff that went on that, again, for me, I pivot very quickly. And if there's something that I see where I don't think people are treated well, I leave. I'm really lucky to be in that position. However, I did that when nobody cared to talk to me, right? So that's the piece that is so important, is a character piece. And that's really where my credibility comes from. Because within 24 hours, if this wasn't changed, then I'm gone, because it's again affecting the client. Went on, and so when I left, I was like, okay, yeah, that was fun. And then I started getting calls from every agency. I started getting athletes. Where are you going? Well, where am I going? What do you mean? Well, I want to work with you. "Oh, okay. And my mom's like, you got to do your own thing. Was recruited to another on kind of saw the same thing, the kind of Jerry Maguire, Bob Sugar type of thing. And I don't, I'm not going to mince words. And I didn't see, again, we're not doing right by the client. And then I said, okay, now I'm going to do my own, completely. And, came across people like Jeff Hamilton, who designed Kobe Bryant, who, I met and loved his story and said, I'm here to support you in any way you can, which I was absolutely shocked. And that was a big reason why I decided to continue doing, what I'm doing. But that was just one, what I would say, two agencies that I helped solidify in about 9 months of last year, and now just working on my own. There was a come to you tax company that I started the same time I started Smooth Mortgage Company, that was it's all online. It's one guy working in Chicago, and just cold called. I mean, don't know anything about taxes, but cold called and got about 300 clients for him in under a week and a half. So, but was on the phone from about 6 in the morning to about six o'clock at night. So that old school type of touch is still so important, even with AIs. Really just is about value, regardless of what industry. It comes back to value. What value do you have, and do you care about the client? It's really that simple. I mean, it is. You have to hire the right people. You have to listen to people. You have to get rid of people quickly. It's not easy, and you've got to know when to leave yourself. But really, it boils down to, once you build one business, the industry you can learn, right? But you can't learn leadership, right? I mean, I can teach anybody anything, but I can't teach most people to lead, right? So, and most people, it's like, even if they have an idea, if they're smart, they know to hire a team of people, right? They're like, well, I'm still the marketing person, but I'm not necessarily a CEO. So that's where I come in. A lot of people are like, no, I want to be the owner. I want to be a CEO. Okay, your company is going to be out of business in 6 months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, it's so much about teaching people how to listen to what they're good at. Not that they can't learn, but again, a C-level founder position is much different from I'm an agent, or I developed a protein bar. But for
Mhm.
me, it has to be about, our values and standards have to align in regards to how we treat people. That's my number one. That's the number one reason I work with people. Then from there, I can build something, right? And sometimes we don't know until we get into something with someone, and then we're like, fit. And that happens. And these are things that
Mm.
every entrepreneur who goes and invests or buys businesses go through. They just don't really say it. You've got to know when to leave, but you also have to know when to stay too. So I don't know if that answered your question, but the values have to align. And so for me, it's, you could tell me an idea and I could say this, and that. And normally it's a consulting fee, or you want me to be part of the company. I mean, like, it just depends on what I have time for, but also how big the opportunity is. I was looking to retire both those guys, right? I mean, that's what they wanted me there for. But, but I'm now, doing my own, and as a
Yeah.
woman, and as a parent, I know what it's like to have a child in that kind of space, that entertainment space, and how important it is for the parent to always be there. And it's your
Yeah.
child, and you got to be involved. I mean, anybody successful has teams. Taylor Swift, her mother and brother went to go talk to it. She got her music back. Michael Jordan's mom negotiated. There's so much that parents too, not an egotistical way, but you have to be involved. And don't have anybody tell you you can't be. So I kind of,
Right.
again, put that family tradition, into business, and it's working because people want people that care.
Right.
And that's
Exactly.
kind of
Yeah.
why I've been successful, because I care, and
Yeah.
sometimes a bit too much, but But anyway.
Yeah, I can tell you definitely care. Like with all the different responsibilities, and you said you're a mom too. I mean, like it's a lot. How do you
Yeah.
manage your time for all of them?
I do time blocking. I mean, for me, what Smooth Mortgage was supposed to be for me, Smooth Mortgage, and again, I'm transparent. I was supposed to go and build Smooth Mortgage and just have other people run it. I'm still very involved in Smooth, but I love it. I have a great relationship with Matt Ishby. I'm a client of his. I've learned a lot. I'm not sure what my role is going to look like. I'll always be a large owner company, but with the way the economy went and the pandemic and the rising of rates, it was like this company still needs me to be involved. But really, it's I at this point, I take on projects and do things that I love and where I think I can make an impact. If there's a gap in the market and I see it and there's a solution I think I have, then I'm going to do it. And that's what I see in sports. I mean, sports is shut up and dribble mentality, and these kids they spend their whole lives working on being an athlete. I mean, these kids are really, I mean, these athletes are really child prodigies, for the most part, and their families and everything they're doing. And then to be not treated well, and they're just paying percentages, and you're only as good as you are, as long as you're healthy. How do I take that as a business mentor and make sure that that money turns into generational wealth, right? Especially for a certain group of people that haven't always been treated well in this country. So that's something I'm super passionate about. It's something I know how to do because I've helped people build their own. And that's where the athletes like, I want to work with you and not the typical agent. And I'm not saying all agents are bad. I'm just saying it's that percentage as long as you're healthy. So for me, the work that needs to be done in that industry. So as long as I feel like I have something to add, then I think I should be there. So that's how I work. But I time block out time. And my whole day is pretty much scheduled every week down to the minute. I don't take personal calls unless it's my mother, my father, my daughter, my sister, and I just kind of leave everything, personal to, for, after hours. But I've got really good at being able to delegate and being able to know when to take a call and what not to take a call.
Yeah.
So,
It's awesome. It's awesome. Well, wrapping up here a little bit, if somebody wanted to learn more about you or your work or was maybe interested in coaching or being mentored by you, how can they get in touch with you and learn more?
I would say LinkedIn. I would say LinkedIn would be probably the best. It's where I get, the majority. I mean, I'm like talks about my bio and more what I do, and people can get more of an idea of that. Yeah. So just reach out to me there.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, Kylie, this has been such a fun conversation. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your insight. You were such a unique individual and who you've had the opportunity to work with in your past. I just felt like you had so much to share with us today. So thank you
Thank you.
again for taking the time.
No, thank you guys so much. It was so nice meeting you. You guys are doing incredible work. So, and thank you for being so flexible too. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah, of
of course.
course. Of course.